Fox News alert, Fox News Digital just obtained an exclusive copy of President Trump's personal schedule. It shows he worked for roughly 10 hours per day since December 1st, averaging around 21 separate meetings, calls, or events each day. Some days he even packed over 30 events. Busy schedule. That news coming as President Trump is slamming the New York Times for these headlines, saying that he's showing signs of fatigue and sleeping during cabinet meetings. He wrote in part, quote, "The New York Times and some others like to pretend that I am slowing up and maybe not as sharp as I once was or am in poor physical health, knowing that it is not true." The New York Times and others consistently do fake reports in order to libel and demean the President of the United States. New York Times responded back, saying they won't be deterred from writing about his health. I wonder what deterred them from writing in full about Biden's health. CNN was quick to jump all over this.
There are multiple videos of him appearing to nod off or at least close his eyes for rather long periods of time during some recent public appearances. This president, who certainly can appear very vigorous at times and seems to be up often during the night on social media, is chafing when people notice he does not seem to be able to keep his eyes open.
Really, Anderson? Well, don't you remember when Carl Bernstein told you this about President Biden?
People I've talked to have all been to Ron Klain in the last year to say we have a problem. We have a problem such as we saw the other night, that there have been numerous instances where the president has lost his train of thought, can't pick it up again. There was a fundraiser at which he started at the podium, and then he became very stiff, according to the people there, as if it were almost a kind of rigor mortis.
And over at MS Now, they're claiming President Trump's age is somehow a national security threat.
I have a national security concern that the president is sleeping all his freaking meetings. Who is running the country? Why can't the president stay awake? What is really these are the questions we have to ask. Sir, why are you so damn tired?
Sleepy dog.
What is going on, Mr. President? Are you okay?
Now, I could talk about all the wars President Trump has ended, and as you can see, he's ended a lot. But Simone, I have to ask, weren't you in the Biden-Harris White House? Did you ask why Biden skipped a G7 meeting to, quote, go to bed? Were you this concerned when Biden stopped scheduling events after 8 p.m. because he needed more sleep? I guess no national security threats happen after 8 p.m. Or maybe you didn't know any of this. How would you when White House officials like Ian Sams only saw Biden twice in 2 years? Reporter Olivia Nuzzi knew this, though. She wrote this back in 2024, saying there was a conspiracy of silence to protect Joe Biden. Adding reporters debated how dead he looked as they settled on about 40%. But wait, they never reported that. Joining me now, former Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy. Speaker McCarthy, we both have worked in and around President Trump. I was in meetings with him. The man works 20 calls. That seems lowballing it to me. And then you contrast that with President Biden, who I've never seen, but you've seen up front. I mean, I can't believe the media is trying to pull this.
This is the biggest joke I've ever heard. I will tell you, you take somebody half the age of President Trump, and they would not be able to keep up with him. He is unbelievable. I have gone where we will work during the day, fly across the country, do more work, and come back, and he'd still be working the phones. You may show that he has 30 meetings during the day. They don't show how much he'll work the phones at night. 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night, he's calling people and working. He has done more in 1 week than Biden would do in his entire 4 years. When I would go and meet with President Biden, it was amazing. Nobody was in the Oval Office. Nothing was happening. It was so quiet. It was eerie. And I remember President Biden calling me saying, I'm going to come home. I want to meet tomorrow, but I need to sleep. Can it be later in the afternoon? And you would never hear that from Trump. President Trump would call you and say, bring people down right now, less work. And you'd be in the Oval Office late into the night, and he'd go work some more.
Yeah, his guest would be snoozing in the Oval, not the president, because we're all trying to get a little rest. It's hard to keep up with Trump. I do want to ask you about this. You know, of course, you're from California, and there's redistricting that has gone on there. And there's this Politico headline that resurfaced this week. Massacred, or I should say a new headline, the California GOP hits a new low. First, a Democratic gerrymander pushed California House Republicans to the brink of extinction. Now they're fighting each other for the scraps. We know Gavin Newsom redrew the map, so they're California Dems essentially picking up 5 more seats. I mean, are the Republicans in shambles over there? What's going on?
Well, the difficulty is, if you go across the nation, where do the most Republicans live? Not in Texas, not in Florida, but in California. What Gavin Newsom did is he went against the Constitution because the people of California voted by 61% to have a commission where they want competitive lines. And remember this, when Nancy Pelosi got elected as Speaker, I got elected as Republican leader. 4 years later, we took the majority by 5 seats. Do you know we won 5 more seats in California? Not by redistricting, but having better candidates, more competition, and we won in New York, we won across the country, elected the most women, the most minority Republicans in the Republican history. What Gavin now has done is guarantee that 94% of the seats in California are only Democrats can win. He's picking the politicians, not the voters picking who to elect them. You've watched this time and again what the Democrats did in Illinois. You look New Mexico. Republicans vote 40%. They have no representation. This is where people in their state lose out. Nobody on Ways and Means, nobody on energy and commerce. How does that happen when you have the 4th largest economy in the world? Because Gavin Newsom wants to run for president instead of empowering and making the very best. Remember how the founders designed this country. That, you know what, if you don't do a good job, you can lose. But if you do good job, you can win Congress. I like competition more than predetermining who's going to win these races.
Well, we know, Dems essentially pick up 5 seats in California and Texas 5. It kind of balances each other out. From what I've read, Republicans have a 2 to 3 seat advantage in the redistricting. I mean, where do you think it stands?
I think it's about even right now. You never know how these are going to turn out when somebody tries to draw it out. I simply say get the very best candidates, and they need to focus. I think it's a wake-up call after New Jersey and Virginia. Those are always good indicators which direction it's going. Also, if you look at the special election that you just had in Georgia, a seat Republicans won by 61% and just lost. If you ignore this, you could have a very bad November. You sit in the majority in the House. You control the agenda. You know what? Start working on those issues. The things that President Trump has done on executive orders, start passing them, showing where the Democrats, they don't want safe streets. They don't want the best education for their kids. They don't want this opportunity. They don't want a strong market, right? Remember what they have done and a secure border. And then you would win and keep the majority and grow it.
Thank you, Kevin McCarthy.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.